A huge amount of funds is still stuck on Aave. This has now been going on for several days, and I'm going to give you a full situation update. We're going to talk about Justin Sun filing a lawsuit against World Liberty Financial. We talk about Bitcoin's price too. I'm also going to talk about AI. I've got a lot to tell you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Crypto Red, the crypto news channel. As for the crypto market, Bitcoin is at $78,000, up 2%. Ethereum is up as well, and the market overall is moving higher. Overall, things keep moving in the right direction. There's still a lot going on. There's still a lot of noise. It's still a bit of a mess in some areas in Iran and stuff like this. But yeah, we're getting straight into the news. Let's start with the news. As I said, Bitcoin is up. And yeah, the first news I want to talk about is Justin Sun. Justin Sun has filed a lawsuit against World Liberty Financial, the project linked to Trump. We know he's one of the main investors in World Liberty Financial, Justin Sun. And now he's saying very clearly, I'm filing a lawsuit because you blocked my tokens. He can't use them anymore. He can't vote with his tokens anymore. Honestly, we had been expecting something like this for a while, but I think he didn't want to go head on against Donald Trump because the administration could probably cause him a lot of trouble. You know, he's had issues with the SEC and so on, but in his message, he was careful not to attack Trump directly. He basically said, I've got nothing against Donald Trump. The problem is that certain people running World Liberty Financial are doing stuff that are illegal. And that's where we are now. One of the main investors in the project is suing the project because he can't access his tokens. Then you may remember my video about Hyperliquid. I told you that Hyperliquid was starting to position itself, especially with HIP4 as a competitor to prediction markets. Well, today, on the exact same day, the two biggest prediction market platforms also started moving toward Hyperliquid's territory, meaning the perpetual futures market. We're talking about Kalshi, which just announced that it was going to launch perpetual contracts. So that's coming to their platform. And in other words, people will be able to trade crypto and other assets with significant leverage. And Polymarket too. Polymarket also said that they are preparing something around perpetual futures trading. So that should be coming as well soon, although we still don't know exactly when. And I don't think they're going to build those platforms on top of Hyperliquid because they are clearly competitors. So there's really no reason for them to do that. But I've been telling you this for a while now. The platforms are converging. Prediction markets are moving towards trading platforms, and trading platforms are moving towards prediction markets with HIP4. So personally, I'm pretty bullish on what's coming to Hyperliquid with HIP4. I think it's going to change a lot of things. I think a lot of applications are going to be built on top of it. I think a lot of prediction markets are going to be launched on top of Hyperliquid. Yeah, that's my opinion on the subject. And still on the topic of trading and Hyperliquid, blockchain.com, the old school wallet that later turned into an exchange, has also just added perpetual trading, perpetual futures. In their case, they actually use Hyperliquid to do it. That's not really their core business, so this is part of Hyperliquid strategy. Platforms that want to enter the perpetual trading space can rely on their infrastructure provided by Hyperliquid. They're even expecting, for example, that major exchanges will build on top of Hyperliquid because it makes things a lot simpler for them. Then they can charge fees. The exchanges can charge fees to the users on top of Hyperliquid fees. And in reality, the real value add for exchanges is their distribution, the customer database. They have a lot of users, and that way they can easily offer products and services to those users. We're seeing the same thing with wallets too. More and more of them are integrating with trading platforms, and mainly with Hyperliquid, MetaMask, Rabi, and others. Now, let's talk about Aave. I told you there are things happening on Aave. I'm not going to go back over the hack itself because I've talked about it a lot over the last few days. Of course, it wasn't an Aave hack. It was the LayerZero hack that led to the losses of close to $300 million for Kelp. That had an impact on Aave because those tokens had been deposited on Aave. The hacker deposited the hack tokens, and let's put it that way, he borrowed real Ether against them, and that created a lot of consequences for Aave. And now, if you look at what Kelp is saying, if you look at what this website is saying, there are a lot of markets on Aave that are sitting at 100% utilization. 100% utilization means all the liquidity that was deposited has been borrowed. Whether that liquidity was borrowed by the hacker for the Ether or borrowed by a user who got scared for everything else, the result is the same. And that is a very important point because it means that if you have money deposited there, you can't withdraw it. In fact, in a lot of markets, you can't withdraw it. I found this dashboard really interesting. The Strait of Aave, which is kind of a play on the the Strait of Hormuz stuff which is blocked in Iran and stuff like this. But it gives a picture of what is working and what is not working on Aave. And you can clearly see that a huge number of markets are at 100% utilization. Ether on Ethereum, USDC, USDT, a lot of markets are basically stuck. And what is worrying once again, because it means that everyone who had liquidity there cannot withdraw it. Another major issue is that when there is no liquidity, liquidations become very complicated. Normally, liquidators are paid with the collateral. But if that collateral is no longer available or is mostly no longer available, or it's no longer worth anything, or there simply is not enough liquidity to pay the liquidator, then everything becomes much more difficult. In this case, the person coming to liquidate would not be paid directly in collateral. They would be paid in Aave token that represents, in theory, a share of the collateral still available on Aave. So there's absolutely no guarantee that liquidation will happen properly. And if liquidation do not happen properly and the crypto prices start falling, then that could create even more bad debts for Aave. Right now, thankfully, crypto prices are not falling. They've actually been going up. But if prices do start dropping, that could make Aave's bad debts much worse. And that is serious. It is really serious. It could lead to losses that are much bigger than the losses we're already looking at now. Yesterday, I was fairly optimistic. I told you that if Kelp came out today with a rescue plan, or even if they said, all right, we're going to unlock the Kelp and there is a 15% haircut for everyone, Aave would probably get through it. But that problem is that we are still stuck in this gray zone where Kelp is not making any announcement, LayerZero is not making any announcement, there's still ongoing discussion, and it just drags on and drags on and drags on. And I told you yesterday, if this stays frozen for weeks or months, it's catastrophic. And I still stand by that. If this stays blocked for a long time, and especially if crypto prices drop on top of that, then honestly, what is happening right now becomes very risky for Aave. This is not an Aave hack. I told you that already. It's a hack affecting project that Aave added onto Aave, but it does raise question about how Aave works. We can already see right now that there are problems, there are risks, and there is never such a thing as a risk-free yield. And it also raises other questions. Look, do you know Mark Zeller? Mark Zeller worked for a long time for Aave with the Aave Chan initiative, and he worked at Aave before. And he just made the post after someone brought something up. He said that he had invested in Kelp himself. He's an angel investor in Kelp. He had invested in Kelp, and he said that didn't influence his decision when came the time to add the RSE token to Aave. But it was Mark Zeller who, as part of his work with the ACI, the Aave Chain Initiative, made the proposal to add RSE token from Kelp to Aave. So you can see the conflict of interest here. Even if he says he initially voted against it and so on, he was still involved in the whole thing. And that is clearly a problem, because honestly, it's real conflicts of interest. I personally think he probably shouldn't have handled that himself. Maybe he should have delegated to someone else, or just said, for Kelp, someone else should take care of this. I don't know, but it feels a bit questionable to me. Now, I don't think it necessarily had an actual impact on the final decision, because he said that back in January when he was added, he had more than $10 million in Aave, and that he wasn't going to let a $20,000 check influence a decision that could affect tokens worth several $1 million. And of course, he wasn't the only one involved. The different service providers all validated the addition to Aave of RSE, whether it was Llama Risk or Chaos Labs or BGD Labs. What I found interesting is that the only one who really flagged something around the issue I mentioned before, the hyper-centralized nodes on Kelp, and the fact that they were relying on a single DVN from LayerZero, a single node from LayerZero, it was the service provider BGD Labs. Look at what they said. They said, Kelp used LayerZero DVN for verification. They suggested expanding that to other DVNs, but that wasn't raised as a major issue. It was presented as not blocking at all. It was basically mentioned in miscellaneous points, so other points, just a side note. They brought it up, but without treating it as a real blocker, and they still said RSE could be added to Aave on Base and Arbitrum without issue. So clearly something was missed, and it's not just Mark Zeller's fault, it's everyone's fault across the whole chain. Everybody validated it. The only thing is that there was this conflict of interest, and I personally wasn't aware of it before. So yes, it does raise question. There probably should have been more transparency when all this was being promoted. Just to make it clear that there is still a link between the ACI and through Max Zeller and Kelp, that would have been a lot cleaner. Anyway, for now, nothing is moving on Aave. I'll keep you updated. I really hope this gets resolved quickly and that Aave gets through it without any major issue, because it's still one of the pillars of DeFi. If there is a serious problem on Aave, it could have a real impact on the whole DeFi ecosystem, and I really hope they find a way out. I'll keep you posted. At this point, the key issue is Kelp. Kelp has to do something, and if Kelp doesn't react in time, then Aave, I don't know, maybe they need to find another solution, maybe even a temporary loan. Just as an extreme example, like raising $1 billion from someone willing to step in and provide temporary liquidity, for example, Tether or something like this. And then that gets repaid once the Kelp issue is resolved. But clearly, something has to be done to solve this liquidity problem and deal with the fact that people no longer trust Aave. That's why they're borrowing. That's why that's why I think they should borrow funds right now. Then, after that, let's talk about AI. Yeah, because there is also a connection to crypto in a way. I'm going to show you this thing. So XAI, Elon Musk company that merged with SpaceX. Basically, XAI reportedly made a deal with Cursor that gives it the right to buy Cursor for $60 billion this year. Cursor is a big AI company for developers. They have an IDE, they have a tool for developers to create code. And it's tied also to data center sharing agreements. In short, XAI has a lot of data center capacity. They're going to let Cursor train its model using that infrastructure, and they'll learn from all of that. And at the end of it, they've secured the option to buy Cursor for $60 billion. Why am I bringing this up? Because the $60 billion valuation for Cursor would be absolutely massive. And do you know who was the one of the first investor in Cursor? It was our dear SBF. He invested $200,000 in Cursor first funding round, which was a $400,000 round. So that was basically actually a pretty massive, significant share of that raise, majority of that raise. The stake could now be worth several billions of dollars. I saw an estimate floating around, but I'm not saying it's reliable, but it still could be really realistically be worth billions of dollars. We're talking about $1, $2, $3 billion, maybe just shy of $1 billion, but you get the idea. It was sold way too early by the people managing the FTX estate. They sold it for only $200,000. So the amount FTX bought, just 1 year later after the investment, they sold it. All of this just confirms, in my opinion, that SBF really was very, very good investors. But the problem is that he was investing money that didn't belong to him. It was still theft. It was still fraud. And none of that changes, even if the investments were good. Yeah, so he invested also in Anthropic. I don't know if you realize how insane that is. He invested $500 million in Anthropic that would now be worth tens of billions of dollars. He invested in Solana, in Robinhood. And yeah, he had no right to do any of that, but he still shows that he had a real talent for spotting projects with huge potential. That's what I wanted to tell you today about the different crypto stories. I hope you enjoyed the content. If you did, not hesitate to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow for the rest. Bye-bye.